All right, thank you, Bobby. Good job. Thank you, Terry. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. We're here to win, right? So what do you want to do? You want to win? I want you all to know something that I think is really important. I come from your neighbor overseas, Wisconsin, and something we've got in common together is that we both have incredibly talented, wonderful, authentic, real people that are leading our state. And all the analysis in the world cannot replace something that I have in Wisconsin and you have in Michigan with Governor Snyder and Governor Walker. We have people that have cracked the magic formula in this country. And it really isn't all that complicated. What this country is starving for, they're starving for real, authentic people that want to serve this country with a pure heart and make a difference. And when I ask the question, as I've done for years in Wisconsin, and Tonette and Scott, I'm sorry, I'm going to do it again, but it's a question that as a party we have to come back to, which is, what does this party need? And you have it right in front of you here in Michigan. We've got it in Wisconsin, and it's a simple formula. We simply need people with a pure heart, people of their word, that win and govern like they campaign. That's what this party needs, and we need more of it. We need a party that understands that we can't just be a bunch of vanilla and cotton candy. We need a party that understands that Obamacare is destroying this country and it's going to destroy it even further, and that we will send a bill to the Senate to defund Obamacare, and now it's up to the Senate to make sure that we defund Obamacare once and for all. Are you with me? We need more things in this party. We need all of you. We need all of you. We need a unified party. A house divided cannot stand. You have leadership here in Michigan. You need to know something, because you don't hear this enough. Between Terry and David, your committee people, and I want you to know with your chairman, Bobby Shostak, you have got one of the best, and if I wasn't from Wisconsin, I would say the best. You have one of the best, or the best, Republican parties in the entire country. And let me just hang on. You have a very serious organization. Go look at the FEC reports. Go show me another state that raises millions and millions of dollars and has a pedigree. I mean, I have Chairman Doyle and Weiser and Nuzis, obviously now with Bobby in charge. You have something very special here in this country. And I don't know if you hear it enough. And I just want you to know that as we look at states that we want to partner with as a national party, it makes it a whole lot easier when you've got a chairman that understands what the job of being chairman is in charge of your party and understands what his job is, and that's to win. It's to govern under the conservative principles that made our party great, and that's what Bobby and your team is all about. I'm thankful for that prayer, because that prayer reminds me that we're together in a party that prays. We understand that the answer to our problems We understand that the answer to our problems are not found in government. We know ultimately that the answer to our problems are found in God. But you know, we've all been called to be salt and light of the world. And that means that we have a responsibility, which brings us all together. We have a common fellowship together as Republicans. We love our country. We love our states. We want the best for our kids. We understand what freedom and opportunity and equality is all about. And that's what brings us together. And let's not forget what brings us together. We have so much at stake in this country. You have so much at stake here. You know, I tell you a little story, and then I want to tell you what we're up to. I've got a little guy named Jack. And you all know that I've got a pretty weird name. And I've got two kids, Jack and Grace, and it is nice to know that some family traditions are coming to an end, and that's Reince Priebus is coming to an end. It's certainly what happens when a Greek and a German get married. But Scott will tell them as normal as they get, despite the name. And so I went with my little guy, Jack. How many people here have been to the World War II Memorial? Okay? Well, I think you'd agree with me. You get out of it what you're willing to put into it, right? And so Jack is 8. He's a good little reader, very curious. I think he'd be like a typical little boy. And so we went to the World War II Memorial. And we walked around and we read the great quotes around the memorial from Nimitz and Eisenhower and all of these incredible heroes. And then we walked up to that place. Hey, they're replaying my video. That's very good. Thank you. And then we walked up to that place in the World War II Memorial with those 4,000 golden stars. And when you walk up there with your little guy, you start to figure it out. That for every one of those golden stars, 100 little guys, obviously a little bit older than Jack, didn't come home to mom and dad. And you can never, ever, nor would I ever suggest that you could put yourself in those shoes. But for you young parents, you know that little fleeting moment when you do, just for that second. And you start to wonder, I wonder what it would be like if Jack didn't come home. And in front of that wall, in gold on the black granite, it says, "Here we mark the price of freedom." And when you think about what's at stake in our country, what brings us together as Republicans, it's all said right there. Here we mark the price of freedom. And so I want to tell you what I think we need to do as a national party to make a difference. You know, we all got a different theory of the case, right? And like all of our lives, and like me as chairman of the RNC, I have to focus in on the things that I most control. And what I most control isn't always the most exciting subject for us to talk about. A lot of times it's mechanics, it's data, it's our branding and marketing, our primary system that's a total disaster. But I want to talk to you about what it is. Number one, our party cannot compete at a national level by being a party that shows up once every 4 years, 5 months before an election in 10 states. It can't work anymore that way. So what are we doing about it? We're building out a national ground operation in 2013 with hundreds of people across the country that are doing the hard work at church festivals, community events, swearing-in ceremonies, getting out the vote, demographic groups that we haven't been for long enough. A massive voter engagement effort that starts here in Michigan. You know, between the Michigan GOP and the national party, we are, as far as a national organization, the only entity in America that is spending money right now on the ground in Michigan with the Michigan GOP, and that's the Republican National Committee. We're the only ones doing it. And we're going to continue to do it. Because here's what's going on, everybody. Here's what's going on. If I'm Ryan, let's just say I'm Ryan. Reince isn't going to work in Cleveland or Detroit or Milwaukee. We'll go with Ryan. I'm calling Bobby. And I figure out, we're in August. I'm working for the RNC or the party. And I figure out, what, Bobby's about a 6 out of 10 for Mitt Romney. Let's just say he's not the party chair at the moment. And his issue is spending. So what do? We send Bobby a few flyers. We get to Bobby. We encourage him to vote. We get him out to the polls. You've all made the phone calls. Now what does the other side do? 3.5 years ago, they hired 12 people. And in fact, they grew up in the section of Detroit that Bobby lives in. And you know what? 10 blocks down the road, there's another 12 and another 12 and another 12 and another 12, and they're all paid. And there, Ryan is given a piece of paper. And that paper has got 800 names on it. And that paper has a list of people who vote, the people that don't, the people that would if you get to them. But you know what, Ryan? You're going to get to know these people. And we're going to do registration drives. We'll bring in a band. We'll do a pizza party. We'll have some VIPs come in the end. And then we're going to have a whole lot of early voting. But every one of those 12 on every 10 blocks is going to have 800 names. And they're doing it across the country. They're doing it in rural areas, in urban areas, in Asian areas, African American, Hispanic, and they're hitting us all over the place. We cannot survive by being a party that shows up once every 4 years, 5 months before an election. I don't care who the candidate is. You can't win with that formula. And we're changing it. And that's what we're doing. Number one is putting in place a massive, permanent ground game across this country. Next thing. The next thing we're doing. And it's about a $40 million fix. And the governors need it. The House members need it. The senators need it. And that's a digital and data upgrade. And let me just tell you a little bit about what we're doing. We just hired the #1 software engineer from Facebook to come on board as the first CTO of the RNC. We just opened a Silicon Valley office out in San Francisco. We have software engineers that are working in that Silicon Valley office for the RNC, writing code, building applications, improving our data. And here's a little glimpse of what we're doing. We'll go back to Bobby in Detroit, who's a 6 out of 10 for Mitt Romney. It's not good enough to just send Bobby a bunch of flyers and maybe an email. What I want to know are who are Bobby's influencers, friends, business partners, immediate neighbors that might be 9s out of 10s for Mitt Romney or a 10 out of 10. And that person is going to email, communicate, call, and directly influence Bobby. So instead of Bobby being a 6 out of 10, he's going to be an 8 or a 9 out of 10 because we're going to ID that person. And then the third time that person goes to the newspaper website, a pop-up shows up and says, Bobby, would you make 10 phone calls for Mitt Romney between now and Election Day? So I've taken a 6 out of 10 blind. I've turned him into a 9 out of 10 because I knew his immediate neighbor was a 9 out of 10. And now he's making phone calls for the campaign. These are things that the party needs to do. It's not glory, guys. It's a total grind. But this is what building a party is all about. This is what being effective is. When I walked in the door at the RNC with Ron Weiser, we were $26 million in debt. Something you don't know, both credit cards were suspended for non-payment. Now, can you imagine one of the two biggest political parties in the world, and your credit cards are suspended for non-payment a year and a half before a presidential election? We had 80 employees across the country. Do you know how many Barack Obama had in Florida? About 800. It tells you something about what's going on in this country. It's not just the headlines. It's underneath. And if we're going to win a big, cultural, popular vote in this country, that's what it's going to take. Scott, we had about 2.5 million people that voted in that recall election in June, 4 months before the November election. We had 3.1 million people that voted in November. Mitt Romney almost received the most votes of any Republican in the history of Wisconsin. And he got beat pretty bad. So what does it mean? It means we got to get on the ground and make a difference. And number 3, it means we need to tell people what we're all about as Republicans. Who are we as Republicans? We're the party of freedom and opportunity and equality. But you wouldn't know it because we don't talk about it. You know, it's the other party that's got the shameful history. Not us. But we don't talk about it. But we're going to. And it's about time that this party recaptures the history of the Republican Party once and for all. We need to tell people what we're all about instead of running from the word Republican. You see on TV, and you'll even hear it this weekend. Oh, I'm not a Republican, I'm a conservative. I'm not a Republican, I'm a libertarian. I'm not a Republican, I'm a liberty. I'm not. Except guess what? The word under Scott Walker's name and the word under Governor Snyder's name says Republican. And it means something. Do we care? I mean, do we care about these things? Or would we rather just slice and dice and try to figure out who's a real Republican and who's not, who's a real conservative and who's not? We're not going to win anything that way. We can't win anything in this party through subtraction and division. We can only win through addition and multiplication. Which brings me to our primary system, which I think is a complete disaster, and I want to fix it. I think a year-round primary of slicing and dicing and dividing and subtraction is killing this party. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take the convention at the end of August, and we're going to move it to the end of June. And you might say, well, part of the reason is, guys, you might say, well, nice guy and all, but he missed a big problem here because Mitt Romney got himself defined early. But here's the problem. When you're broke coming out of a year-round primary, you know the campaign finance laws, you know what they tell you? You could have $100 million in a general election bucket, but you can't spend it until you get nominated in Tampa. So you are a duck on the pond. You can't defend yourself. This is not an establishment takeover. This is using your brain and making sure that when you have a candidate that comes through a tough primary, which I'm sure will be the case in 2016, that you allow that candidate to get to the general election money, and we shorten the primary process as well. The next thing, we're going to have a death penalty for any state that decides they're going to jump the calendar early. We're not going to have slap-on-the-wrist penalties. We're not going to have slap-on-the-wrist penalties for states that jump the calendar. If a state jumps the calendar, the rule's already there, guys, so there's nothing to implement. It's there. It's not a matter of receiving half of your delegates. You're going to go down to 9. So it's pretty much a non-factor if you jump the calendar. The next thing, this 23 debate traveling circus that we've embarked on in this party, that's also coming to an end. And guys, we're not going to have CNN and NBC host our debates either, right? It's about time we stop taking punches in the nose and acting like nothing's wrong in this party. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to tell our candidates. So here's the problem. It's not just the media. But if let's just, we'll go to a boy, it's hard to find a non-presidential possible contender table here. Okay. Terry, we'll assume you're not going to run for president in 2016. Okay. Okay, this table over here, you're all running for president. Terry is at 30% in Iowa. Now, what happens, everyone else, unfortunately, you're all at about 2% in Iowa. And what happens is all of you will raise your hand for any 2-hour debate offered to you because you want to get on TV, and we hope that Terry makes a whole bunch of mistakes in Iowa. That's how you get a 23-debate traveling circus. So what are we going to do? We're going to limit the debates, maybe 7, maybe 8. We're going to be involved in deciding who the debate partners are and the moderators are. And then we're going to tell the candidates, here you go, candidates. Here are the 7 or 8 debates. You can compete in these debates if you want to, but if you compete in a debate other than the ones that are on this piece of paper, you lose 30% of your delegates every time you violate. So it's pretty simple. Guys, this is what we need to do to protect our party. Number 1, permanent ground game. Fix our digital and data operation. Brand and market this party on the theme that we're the party of unlimited opportunity for everyone. And we fix our primary system in our debate calendar. And we're not only going to have great success in 2014 and keeping our governors in place, winning the United States Senate, keeping the House, and building a Republican Party to 2016. Now, I want to close with one little story about where my head's at, where my heart's at, because I want to make you guys proud of this party. I want you to be proud of the Republican Party. And I want to work like a dog to do it. I went and visited a person, I'm not going to tell you who it is, but he was someone that has given a lot to our party, and he's a real gentleman in this country, a very generous man. And it was just shortly after the presidential election. And it was going to be a tough meeting. I knew it. Because he can be kind of tough. He can be, I would say, maybe mean, aggressive. He just tells you like it is. That's why he's incredibly successful. And I went in to sit down with him. And I wanted to tell him what I think we need to do in our party. And as I got through it, he said, no, hang on a second. Just stop. Stop. Quit. Hang on. Time out. Reince, you're young. You're smart. Now, I know that's debatable. We can all chuckle about that. But you're young. You're smart. Here's the deal. If you're not going to be big and you're not going to be bold, then don't waste my time. If you're not going to be big and you're not going to be bold, then don't waste your kids' time. Don't waste your wife's time. You know, I'd love to have you down the hallway and work for me. It'd be great. You'd be fantastic to have here working for me. But just remember this advice. If you're not going to be big and you're not going to be bold, then forget about it. It's not worth it. That's where we're all at. And that's what I hope that the party here in Michigan, and through Bobby's leadership, and with Terry and Dave together, and great people like Saul and Ron, and a great legacy in this party, and an incredible governor that's leading the way, that you would take that attitude and that desire to be big and bold and build a party so that you can win here in Michigan, and you can win in the presidential year. And I'm going to try to do the same in every state across the country. That's my promise to you, to be a great partner and do everything I can to make you proud of this party. That's what the RNC is all about. That's what I'm about. And that's what we all have to be about together. So thank you and God bless you. Appreciate it.